Most people picture a power grid failure as a sudden plunge into darkness. You light some candles, break out the board games, and wait for the utility company to fix the problem. We tend to treat electricity as a standalone service, a monthly bill running parallel to natural gas, water, or trash collection. But the grid sits underneath those other services, acting as the invisible foundation modern life relies on. When that foundation cracks, water pumping, mobile networks, fuel distribution, and hospitals begin a rapid chain reaction of failure. To understand how fragile this architecture really is, we need to look at what happens when a region loses power for 7 full days. A week-long blackout triggers a rapid, unseen unraveling of the infrastructure that keeps human society functional. In the first 24 hours, the disruptions appear manageable. Elevators stop between floors. Commuter trains halt on the tracks. Traffic lights go dark at intersections. Because cell towers switch to battery backups, people can still text family and check the news. The prevailing assumption is that lights will return by dinner, so public behavior remains largely normal. The first signs of real friction appear in retail spaces. Shop staff suddenly realize they cannot process credit card payments, and grocery managers watch the temperature slowly rise in their commercial refrigerators. Because the situation does not look life-threatening yet, authorities and citizens delay critical survival behavior, burning through the brief window they have to prepare. The greatest danger of the first day is psychological complacency. By the second and third day, the finite buffers run out. The crisis shifts to severe physical dependency, starting with the sudden loss of municipal water pressure. This diagram illustrates the mechanical bottleneck. Treatment plants and municipal pumps rely entirely on the electrical grid to push water up into towers and into your home. When the grid fails, gravity empties the remaining reserves, and the pressure at your tap drops to zero. At the same time, the food supply chain undergoes a quiet collapse. Cold chain logistics, the temperature-controlled supply lines that keep food fresh, break down as store refrigerators and massive warehouse freezers inevitably warm up, destroying perishable goods before they can ever be sold. As household power banks drain, charging a mobile phone becomes nearly impossible. Those devices transition into vital lifelines, used strictly to gather information and coordinate with family. By day 3, store shelves are empty. These shortages emerge because the digital and electrical coordination required to route and distribute resources has died. Entering days 3 through 5, systemic strain reaches a breaking point. The emergency backup systems at hospitals, data centers, and emergency call centers face imminent failure. We trust these facilities because they have massive emergency generators. But an emergency generator can only provide power if it has a constant, uninterrupted supply of diesel fuel. This diagram maps out an impossible logistical loop. A hospital generator depends on a delivery truck bringing diesel, which depends on a local fuel station. But the station requires an electric underground pump. Without the grid, this entire loop halts completely. Inside healthcare facilities, this forces severe triage. Medical staff have to abandon standard care as electronic health records go dark, medical gases stop flowing, and the sterilization of surgical equipment becomes unsustainable. The systemic crisis peaks in this window because our emergency backup plans ultimately rely on the exact same crippled base layer as the primary systems they are meant to replace. In the final days of the week, the outage shifts into a test of social order. Local authorities are overwhelmed, forcing them to make grim, difficult prioritization decisions about which neighborhoods receive the remaining emergency resources. The vulnerability is highly unequal. The people who suffer first and most severely are the elderly living alone, individuals who are reliant on powered medical devices, and those trapped in high-density housing without access to local support. Across a blackout zone, different neighborhoods experience wildly different outcomes. Communities with strong, pre-existing local communication networks share resources and degrade much slower than fragmented communities, regardless of their starting wealth. The hyper-efficiency of the modern city functions because it assumes continuous operation. When that continuity breaks, it exposes deep disparities in social resilience. Popular culture has trained us to think that surviving a long blackout requires massive fuel hoarding, expensive tactical gear, or an underground bunker. The reality is far less cinematic. The actual priorities are entirely mundane. Survival depends on having stored drinking water, a battery-powered radio for receiving verified information, and physical cash for when digital payment networks are completely dead. Modern life functions as an interdependent network of trust and coordination, held together by the very systems we usually take for granted. Resilience in the face of systemic collapse relies on the social connections built with neighbors long before the lights go out.